So hey, if I haven't met you, my name is Shelby, and you have chosen a good week to come hang out at the gathering. It's a Christmas series. It's the first sermon in this series called Hope, and we are excited about this because it's Christmas time. We get to listen to some awesome Christmas music. We love Christmas time, and we've kind of decided that hope is a good word for this Christmas series. Because I think that no matter what you grew up in, if you grew up in a family that celebrated Christmas at least, I think that feeling that we had as a kid, the feeling you had as a kid, and the feeling that I had as a kid as we waited for Christmas morning, it's probably good to be defined as hope. And your hope was probably much similar to my hope. Wait, hold on, stop. Some of you are middle schoolers right now and saying, man, I hope Shelby would stop talking. And that's because this environment isn't for you. Back in the back is Ty. And Ty wants to take all the middle schoolers out. So go on out. If you're in middle school, go out to Ty. Let's give Ty a hand. Man, we are off to a rocking start this morning. So, like I said, there's Christmas presents, yada, yada, yada. You're a kid, you have hope. Okay, but to get the experience, that feeling of hope as you were a kid, I thought, how cool would it be to look up some toys that maybe you were hoping for when you were a kid. And so I pulled up some of those. I don't know if you can see that. This is one of them. This was in the 1970s. Anyone wish or hope for Teddy Ruxpin when you were a kid? Yeah, that thing is scary, all right? Some of you played with Teddy Ruxpin, and I can tell, and there's some fear that's happening there. Okay, so the next one we got is Cabbage Patch Dolls. Anyone ever? Yes. Has anyone been to the Cabbage Patch place? That's weird how they're born. Okay, next is NES. Anyone? Yes, that's my jam. I still have my NES. That's pretty cool. All right, next. Caterpillar. Glowworm. Okay, all right. Sweet, okay. Next. A Stretch Armstrong. Anyone? Okay, look at this. 75 cents for that Stretch Armstrong. All right, next is nothing. Okay, so I had a Furby up there, but one time I took Elise and we showed her the movie Gremlins, and then we put the Furby in her room. Bad experience. Don't do that. So, but you know that feeling that's in your life that gives you, it's just this, the only way to describe it is hope. And man, for Christmas time, we hope for a lot of things during Christmas. This Christmas season is unique for us because Story is with us, and this is Story's very first Christmas. And so last week we went to go get a Christmas tree, and I had a hope in my mind that we would get to the Christmas tree farm, and we were going to show Story this awesome version of a family getting a Christmas tree. And so in my mind, we were going to get out and walk over the Christmas forest, like frolic through it, and then we were going to find that Christmas tree, and I was going to kneel down, and all the kids would gather around, and we'd hold the saw together, and just one by one. And what really happened is I pulled up, and when you take a 6, a 7, and an 8-year-old, and you open the minivan doors, and there's a giant forest of Christmas trees, they just went running, and I didn't see them. They didn't pick out the tree with us. I don't know if Story knows actually what we were doing out there. But in that moment, it's like I had the opportunity. I had this desire and hope that we would have this really powerful Christmas tree hunt moment. But what was really happening was not that. And so I could have, part of me wanted to just scream at the kids and say, listen, we're going to have fun out here as a family. We're going to cut this tree together. Put your hands on this saw. But I didn't because it's not smart. And then, so hope is hard because when you're in it, when you're living the thing that's in life, the thing that you're hoping for, and it's not coming to fruition, it's not happening the way that you hoped it would, it's hard. And you guys know that. You know that in your heart. Like the things sometimes you have this hope in life, but as you navigate through life, on the other side of the thing that you hope for, it's not exactly the way that you thought it would be, and that's a hard spot to be. Some of you guys walked into this place today, and you're like, man, if I look back at 2019, I hoped for a lot in 2019. And the truth is, I didn't get what I hoped for. I hoped for a new job, maybe, and you didn't get the new job, or maybe you hoped that you would lose a couple pounds on that diet. And then you ate and you didn't lose a couple pounds on the diet, and you're like, what's the use anyway? I'll just eat some more Swiss cake rolls. Or maybe you hope that your team's offense would show up for the football game. Too soon. Too soon. Okay. Noted. All right. Don't take my word for it. Someone a lot smarter talked about this. The author of Proverbs wrote this whole thing this way. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. Man, that's so true. I love this verse because it's true. Even if you're not a believer, you know that's true. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, especially when you're in the moment that you're realizing the thing that you were hoping for, it's starting to slip through your fingers. You guys know that feeling. It's inside of you. It just makes your heart sick. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Because when that happens, when you feel like your heart is sick, when you feel like hope is lost, what often happens is you end up just checking out. It's like that diet. You're like, what's the point of all this? Why keep trying when it's not working out the way that I wanted it to? So on one hand, we say, man, this is the season of hope. In fact, we name our Christmas series Hope Series. Right? On one hand, we say this is the season of hope. We sing songs about hope. Hope is the foundation of every corny Hallmark movie. Like it's hope. But on the other hand, there's a great number of us that are sitting in here this morning or watching online, and you're asking the question. You're like, Shelby, you're talking about hope, but how can I hope? You don't know what I'm going through right now. For many of us, we're asking the question like, and what am I supposed to attach my hope to? What am I supposed to attach my hope to when I lost my job? Or what am I supposed to attach my hope to when my loved one got that diagnosis? Or what am I supposed to attach my hope to when my marriage just isn't what I thought it would be? Or what am I supposed to attach my hope to when my friendship or my relationship with my kid, it's just sour, it's toxic, it's not what I hoped it was? Or what am I supposed to attach my hope to when no matter how hard I try, I keep feeling like a failure as a mom, I feel like a failure as a dad, or no matter how hard I try, I keep going back to that thing that has just consumed me with addiction. And for some of us in this place today, I say the word hope, and what comes up in your mind is like, why? I don't see hope. I don't see a reason for hope. In other words, how am I supposed to hope in a God when it feels like all of the good in my world is fading around me? When the things that I put my hope in, they're repeatedly letting me down. And in the end, all I want to do is check out. And I get it. For some of us in this room, or people that aren't here, but people that you are connected to and you know. And for some of them, they've experienced hope. They put their hope in something, hope that something was going to work out. And in the end, it didn't work out the way they did. And that loss of hope caused them to doubt their faith. In fact, for some people, a lot of people, they walk away from faith altogether because of lost hope. Today we're going to look at that question. How can we find hope in a world that seems like all is lost? We're going to do it by looking at the book of Luke. So if you have your Bibles, go and flip them on open to the book of Luke. And I love Luke because Luke, he kind of went about writing his letter kind of in a scientific way, in a very practical way. He said, look, I heard a lot of these stories about Jesus and they didn't make sense to me. I didn't believe them all, and so I went out, and Luke says, I went out and investigated everything. And he essentially says, look, you can trust what I say, because at one point I didn't know if I believed it, but now I do, and I verified all these eyewitness accounts. And that's Luke. And Luke tells us about two special characters, and if you are familiar with the Christmas story, you've heard of them, but today we're going to talk about Zechariah and Elizabeth, and they're found in Luke chapter 1, and we're going to start in verse 5 and 6, and it says this: In the days of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah of the division of Abijah. Everyone say Abijah. Bless you. And he had a wife from the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth, and they were both righteous before God. They were walking blamelessly in all the commandments and the statutes of the Lord. So we read this, and if we're not careful, we can just read right past it. You know, sometimes we can read Scripture and not think about the people that are actually in the story. let me try to expand a little bit. If we're not careful, we can just see this, there's more religious people that I can never be like. I can never obtain that level of, blamelessness. I can never obtain that level of like goodness. But let me kind of dive into who these people are. Elizabeth and Zechariah, they lived in Judea, and in this area, the people of Israel, the Jews, they have been conquered by Rome. And man, it was a tough place to be. They were conquered by Rome, and with that, there was this abuse of power. Soldiers could come in and take your kids. They could come in and they were raping the women of the village with no justice. They were taxing people and stealing from people with no justice behind it. And here is Zechariah and Elizabeth, and they're just like they're just living life constantly chasing after God. And the crazy part is where they are in their life, from our perspective, God hasn't spoke in the way he once did back in the Old Testament times for about 400 years. So another way to say that is these two are living in tough living environments where it seems like God maybe has forgotten about them, where their parents believed in God, their parents had a faith, their grandparents had a faith, and here they are just clinging to a faith which seemingly didn't have a lot of evidence behind it. People in their lives could have easily said, why do you guys keep going through this motion? Why do you guys keep placing your faith in God? And where is he? God promised that he was going to save the world. Where is he now? If your God is real, where is he? But they just kept on. Luke describes them as blameless and keeping the commandments and statutes of the Lord. See, they stayed the course, and this is an important idea for us. When life feels like it's lost hope, they leaned in when it would have been easier to check out. They leaned in when it would have been easier to check out. And the question is, okay, what'd they get for that? What was their reward for leaning into God? What was their reward for going up and waking up and going to the temple? And what was their reward for that? Well, let's see. Luke 1:7 says this, but they had no child because Elizabeth was barren and both were advanced in years. And man, think about the pain that's in that verse. And no child because Elizabeth was barren and they were advanced in years. Think about the conversations that surrounded this verse in their life. The sleepless nights, all the almosts, all the what ifs, all the prayers that they had for a kid. Think about all of the hope that they had. Now, they were old in age, and it seemed like hope was lost. See, hopeless moments often cause us to walk away from faith. They could have walked away from faith in this moment, and no one would blame them. But they didn't. They stayed blameless and continued to lean into God when it would have been much easier to check out. So this is kind of a mini profile of who Zechariah and Elizabeth was. And Zechariah, he was a priest, and so one day he got to do something that was really unique, something he would have waited his whole life for. He got to go into the temple and do the things that priests do in the temple. And not every priest got to do it. In fact, some would wait their entire life and then they would die and never get that chance. But Zechariah got to, and one day he goes into the temple, and you just imagine the temple scene. Inside, it's just him and God, and it's dark, and there's candles lit and incense. On the outside, it's a bunch of people praying, and there's Zechariah just by himself in the darkness. And he's doing his thing, and then all of a sudden, an angel appears, which to me would be really creepy and freaky and scary. I don't care what angels look like. I don't know what they look like. I don't care if they look like me. It would be really scary. And so the angel comes on the scene and he says this, "Don't be afraid, Zechariah. Don't be afraid, Zechariah. Don't be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard." I love that phrase, don't be afraid. That's how all angels appear to people. Don't be afraid. So whenever you hear people and say, oh, I saw a little angel in my life. No, that wasn't an angel. That may have been gas. I don't know what that was. Because angels are creepy and scary because we don't understand. It's something not of this world. And here is God sending this angel down. He says, whoa, 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 don't be afraid, Zechariah. And then the other line is so important. If you have your Bibles, underline it. For your prayer has been, what's that word? Heard. Your prayer has been heard. Your prayer has been heard. Man, just right there, think about the hope that's attached to that phrase. Your prayer has been heard. For some of us in this room, we've been praying and praying and praying and praying, and we wonder, is my prayer ever going to be answered? Is God even listening to me? Is it being heard? Hear me this morning. Your prayer has been heard. Gabriel says, man, fear not, don't be afraid. Your prayer has been heard. And your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you shall call his name John. He will have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great before the Lord. He says, Zechariah, you're going to have a baby. And Zechariah, I can't imagine what he's feeling, but just those words, I think, just hope comes rushing down or rushing back into his life. But I imagine that he has some kind of doubt. In fact, he does have some doubt. If you look at verse 18, he says this, how shall I know this? For I'm an old man. My wife is advanced in years. So I love this because it's real. Zechariah is kind of confused. He's like, this doesn't make sense. This isn't how it's supposed to work. I'm old. She's old. Don't you get it? We're past this. We've already gone through this whole thing. We've had these prayers. We've had this hope, and it's too late now. How am I supposed to know? What's the sign? Because I just imagine Zechariah's like, listen, I need a sign because I've been down this road before. I've been down this road where it felt like that maybe this time it was going to be different, that this time we were going to have a baby, that this time I saw some sort of sign, and this time there was hope again. And then at the end of that conversation, at the end of those prayers, at the end of that road, time in and time again, nothing. And Gabriel, I'm not going to go back to my wife and create false hope again. So give me a sign, Gabriel. And I love Gabriel's response. It's awesome. The angel answered and said, you want a sign? Hello, I am Gabriel. I am Gabriel, and I stand in the presence of God, and I was sent to speak to you and to bring you this good news. And behold, you will be silent and unable to speak until the day that these things take place, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled at their, what's those last two words? Appointed time. Grab your highlighters, circle that, appointed time. These things are going to be fulfilled at their appointed time. I want to focus on those two words, appointed time. See, since the beginning of time, this moment was put down in God's calendar. So when Zechariah and Elizabeth grieved over the pain of the lost hope surrounding a child, this day was still coming. These words point to the fact that through all of their prayers, this day was still coming. That in all the tough conversation after letdown after letdown, this day was still coming. The appointed time, God was moving behind the scenes. This words, appointed time, it points us to the truth. That whenever they feel like all hope was lost of whether or not a baby was coming in their world, the truth was it still was coming, because it wasn't on their time, it was in God's appointed time. Zechariah and Elizabeth's life reminds us and points us to this truth today, and this is the bottom line for today. So if you don't take anything, just remember this phrase, and it's this: even when you've lost hope, hope has not lost you. Even when you feel like you've lost hope, hope has not lost you. And this is true for Israel. This is true for Zechariah and Elizabeth. I mean, think about this. In their life, it seemed like all hope was lost. God wasn't moving for 400 plus years. it seemed like God had kind of abandoned them there. The Romans have taken over, and they're abusing them. And Zechariah and Elizabeth's prayer life is struggling maybe, or maybe not struggling, but the hope is gone because they thought they were going to have a kid. They hoped for a kid, and they never did. And it seemed like God had maybe abandoned them there. Reality is, he was moving behind the scenes for this specific day, for this specific child, and for these specific parents. Guys, just like God is moving behind the scenes of their life, hear me this morning. God is moving behind the scenes of your life as well. He hasn't forgotten about you. He hears your prayers, and even when you've lost hope, know that hope has not lost you. See, by this time, Zechariah and Elizabeth had every reason to check out from God, to completely lose hope in God. Not only them, but an entire generation had every reason to, because it seemed like God wasn't on the move for 400 plus years, but they leaned in to God. And then Gabriel showed up and gave hope to an entire new generation. For Zechariah and Elizabeth, they continued to lean into God, even in the midst of lost hope or feeling this lost hope. Now, I want to say this, in this season, if you are feeling hopeless, lean into God. Even when it doesn't make sense, lean in to God. There's hope. Even when you feel like you've lost hope, hope has not lost you. I remember a time that I saw this in my life. I share this story a lot because it's about one of my kids. So if you've heard this story before, I don't care. It's about one of my kids. So about 5 years ago, actually 6 years ago, my wife and I were holding it was probably about this time of year. So it's about 6 years, December. My wife and I were holding baby Dodge. He would have been a couple months old, and I was, not both of us together, I was holding Dodge. And Emily came up to me and she said, "Hey, I think it's time that we start the adoption process." And I was like, "Well, I have a baby right here. Our hands are full." And she said, no, it's time, which I'm so glad we did, because we entered the adoption process and we started praying about it, and we felt like there was this hope that God had a little child, boy or girl, that was from the country of Bulgaria. And so we started that process, and we worked towards it, and we put in a lot of money. And then we get a call after about 1.5 years, 2 years from the adoption agency, and they're like, "Hey, Bulgaria they're not going to adopt anymore for foreign countries, so sorry, it's not going to work out. But have you guys thought about Kyrgyzstan?" And we were devastated. I felt like our hope was for his child. We'd already been praying in Bulgarian. No, we weren't. We were praying for this child in Bulgaria, and here God comes in, or here the adoption agency comes and says, "This isn't where you're supposed to be." And our hope just, man, we got to start all over again. We got to enter the system again. We got to put more money in again. And we were debating, like, all right, maybe this is a sign from God. Maybe we're not supposed to do this. And thankfully, we had amazing people that called the gathering home, and they would surround us and say, "No, keep on. God's pushing this direction," and it motivated us to continue on to Kyrgyzstan. And so we did all the paperwork again, which is horrible. And we sent the money again, which is horrible. And then we entered into Kyrgyzstan, and Kyrgyzstan, we were there for like 2 years, and the same thing happened, maybe 1.5 years, same thing happened. We get a call, and they say, "Hey, Kyrgyzstan, they're not going to send any adoptions, foreign adoptions anymore." We're like, "Oh, man, what?" And our hope was that this was supposed to be what we were going to do. Like, we had a hope for a child. It seemed like time and time again, our hope was just lost. The adoption agency says, "Well, not all hope is lost. There's this little girl in Taiwan. Have you ever thought about Taiwan?" And we're like, "No, but tell me more." I sent these videos of this little girl in Taiwan, and we just fell in love with her instantly. Great. And so then we put in for the adoption in Taiwan. And the hard part is the adoption agency said, "Hey, they knew how to manage our hope. They said, don't get your hopes up. There's a bunch of people that are in line before you, and they're already in Taiwan. So you're coming from outside of Taiwan. It's going to take a long time for you to even get processed, but we'll submit your name and see if the adoption agency likes your family or whatever, which is weird. We had to submit our talents. And then a couple of weeks later, we're watching the videos that they sent, and we're praying about it, and we're just getting full of hope. We knew this is it. And a couple of weeks later, we get an email that said, hey, we're sorry. The Taiwan adoption agency said that they're going to pick another family. And we're just like, again. But thankfully, we have people in our lives that just kept pouring hope into us and giving us life and kept us going forward. That night, we get an email that said, urgent email, big mistake. I opened the email, and it started off, we're sorry to inform you there's been an error. Oh, man. Come to find out the error was we were the family that the adoption agency picked. So, fast forward months, we got Story home in March. Today is her 8th birthday, her first birthday in America, and it's awesome. But it's not my story. It's a story of hope. That at the appointed time, God had planned a little girl named Story, or actually her Taiwan name, Yahweh, to be brought into our life. At the appointed time, and I don't know, because in the middle of that, 4 years into it, we thought all hope was lost. And I want to tell you today, if you're 4 years into your thing, the thing that you've been praying for, the thing that you've been hoping for, the thing that you've wanted desperately in your life, and you feel like all hope is lost, I don't know what to tell you except for lean into God. Do the next right thing in that moment. I don't know if it's going to work out the exact way that you hope it's going to work out, but I do know when you lean into God and you chase after God, moment after moment, good things work out in the end, because in the end, even when you feel like hope is lost, it has not lost you. Man, if you want to change your life, lean in to God and cling to that hope. It's a hope that's beyond the circumstances of this world. If you want to change your life, cling to that type of hope. And if you want to change this world, man, it's based on the foundation of people who claim the name of Jesus and cling to the hope that's beyond this world. That's how we change the world together. This whole Christmas season is about this idea. That just at the moment when the world seems like there was no reason for hope anymore, that all hope was lost, that's when hope came rushing down into the world in the form of a little baby boy that changed the game. It wasn't how we thought it was going to happen, but it changed the game. And that little baby boy wasn't just for the people back then. That little baby boy was for you today, to give you hope that there's something more than the here and now. We're going to end. We're going to sing one more song, and now's a chance to respond. And you can respond however you feel led. And I'm going to go to the back of the room. If you want to just come talk to me, I'll come. I would love to talk with you. Man, for so much of our lives, so often we put hope in the things that we can control, and in the end, we miss it. That's not hope. God is offering hope of something so much more than that. So let's just spend this time searching our heart to try to go after that hope. Let's pray.